Rochester City School District is a large urban district. We have approximately 33,000 students.
When I walked in, and we've learned that 16 of the 18 high schools in the district were on the NCLB failing list. Half of the high schools in the city were on the SIR list for New York State. So clearly we had an issue when it came to the achievement of our students. We actually had a school that forgot to give kids global history. Think about that.
We absolutely must first try to inspire people to join us in an effort about focusing on managing and then monitoring and motivating our students. And the goal is that people will see that one of the best ways to do that is to set goals and objectives. And one of the simple goals of any school district, certainly when you come to secondary education, is to graduate your kids.
We walked into the district in February 2008 with a plan to begin reforming the entire district. At the time, Rochester had the lowest graduation rate in New York State, 39% cohort graduation, 4-year graduation rate. One of the questions I asked was, tell me what the class of '08 is. Tell me how many kids you think are on track for graduation. What I found was that a lot of our folks were doing paper and pencil kinds of analysis. But what was most disturbing for me was that they had to go back to the principals, they had to go back to the teachers and the guidance counselors and ask them, well, tell me how many kids are missing, English 5, English 4, global history, economics, etc. We didn't have a centralized way of pulling that easily. Having to provide extra funding for every single school, for overtime, for guidance counselors, to get this kind of information, it became, for me, sort of a no-brainer that we needed to have a system where it was very easy for principals on a micro level to be able to follow their students, but as you say, on a macro level, for us to look at the aggregate and be able to make decisions about funding, about strategy, etc.
And so I think a system like DataCation does one thing that our district needed desperately, which is graduating kids, getting them their cap and gown, and getting them ready to go on to college. DataCation provides the information that teachers and parents and superintendent and the board need to know where our kids are at in that journey. We didn't have that.
One of the biggest issues when I first came on board was data and data collection and just being able to put our fingers on any type of data. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I was shocked when I first came on board was trying to locate students' 4-year plans, where they were in the graduation process. These things just didn't exist.
In terms of cohort data, there wasn't any. We didn't even know who was in a cohort. We couldn't even get a list of students who were in our accountability cohort. So we had a real mess. I had each counselor for their caseload develop a binder. So I had huge binders. And we would spend hours going through trying to figure out lists of, okay, who has passed U.S. history but failed the exam? Who needs to retake the exam in order to graduate? So we would just hand write our lists based on these huge binders, one by one, going through each student individually.
So we actually, myself and my now assistant principal, went to central office and asked our MIS department if they could kind of help us put some type of electronic spreadsheet together. And we started looking into that, and as soon as we started looking into this, the superintendent announced he was bringing in this new program, DataCation.
And we thought, this is it. This is what we've been asking for the past year, trying to get the data in order and being able to assess where are we in terms of AYP, where are we in terms of student progress, cohort progress.
When we saw the DataCation piece, it was exactly what we were looking for. It kind of was a snapshot of each student. It was like the electronic 4-year plan. It allowed us the ability to say to parents, look, this is what your child is missing to graduate.
We had a lot of students fail the math regions this year. So this summer we ran the report of who failed the math regions, and then we designed a 2-block class to provide support this year so that they would pass next year. And being able to use DataCation and run that report gave us the information that we needed to create a class, a double-block class, to support students in meeting that state standard.
So at any time, any place, I have the ability to log on, call up DataCation, be able to see what I need to see. For example, how many students in a given cohort are missing a certain exam, I can call it up and run those reports. So in terms of planning perspective and where do we need to go for the following year, or where do we need extra support, this is it.
One of the biggest responsibilities when I was placed here, is knowing it was a school under registration review, is that the clock is ticking. So we needed to immediately know where cohort was, where were we in terms of AYP and meeting NCLB requirements. We didn't have the time. The state gives us practically maybe 3 years to get better. We relied on paperwork that school counselors had. So for me, it was a very big frustration not having what I needed when I knew how important it was.
The data wasn't in one place. We had at one point, and luckily I caught this, at one point there was 2 kids sitting for a Regents exam that didn't need the Regents exam, and I caught that beforehand and they never took it. But that's an example of, it's not even misinformation, there was no information.
This is our first year as a building in truly using DataCation, where I do trust it. I trust the cohorts, and I'm constantly looking at those cohorts.
With the data that we have now that we didn't have access to before, in terms of organizing the building, thinking about next year, we have data now that helps us to make smarter decisions in regards to how many sections we need. We've got teacher data now that we've never had really before in this way. So we've got access to data that makes us smarter in our decision for the next year and the year after and the year after.
Pretty much the building is 87% either ELL or students with disabilities, but when it comes to testing, that's extended time. And you have to be able to provide the correct testing environment for the kid. The bottom line is we don't have to spend hours upon hours relying on either an administrator of special ed or on teachers or on a counselor. I mean, our first year here, we literally spent hours just being able to organize one day of testing. This year with DataCation, we printed it, we knew the kids where they needed to be, we knew the kids that needed the exams, we were able to organize rooms by mods rooms, regardless if they were student with disabilities or ELL kids, organize the rooms by extended time in terms of if they needed time or if they needed writing mods. I mean, the amount of organization that it allowed us to do this during testing proved to us that we had a very organized testing system.
The commissioners have become very committed to this system and have been able to go into buildings and talk to schools about why their schools are doing well and not well. And that's a very good tool for a conversation between a commissioner and a principal. And it makes it very easy to do everything right now in our high schools, whereas versus we were doing paper pencils throughout the years.
What DataCation allows us to do as leaders is say to our teachers, our principals, our counselors, heck, even our superintendent, that you will be evaluated to the extent that you get kids across that finish line. And you know what? We're not just going to say to you, this is important, but we're going to give you a tool, and that tool is not a yellow sheet of paper. That tool is DataCation, and that tool will allow you to monitor, manage, and motivate your students because you know where they're at. It's a major step up for us.
It has really been critical in terms of us being able to provide the state with a much greater level of accuracy of the data, because we now have the foresight, and we also have the ability prior to the last minute to look at the data, make sure that it's accurate, look at the demographic piece of it, look at the assessment piece of it, look at the grading piece of it, and make sure that it's all in alignment before we send it into the state warehouse.
You know, you go from a mid 30% graduation rate to 57%. Obviously, that's not where you want to be, but in terms of gains in 2 years, that's pretty huge. And to be able to put your fingertips on accurate data at that given time, no doubt does that help us.
Any student who comes in, I pull up DataCation. It's always up. I have a 2-monitor system. It's always up. And I always look at where they are in terms of their 4-year plan.
So now we can our counselors can concentrate more on focusing on the students and their needs in terms of graduation and what they're doing after graduation. And likewise, it frees up our time so I can work more with teachers and curriculum and academics, etc., than making sure that all the information is the same. It's really helped us to accelerate and become a high school.
So there's no excuse anymore to say that I didn't know this kid was missing economics or had not taken the U.S. history regions. Now it's all there and available for anyone to look at. Again, it can be seen at the school level, by class, and we can see it, of course, in the macro level at the central office and be able to tell what schools are doing. So it's made our life here at the central office much easier, and it's made up the life of our principals much easier as well.
Now when I'm called to a meeting and they want to know about my cohort and they needed information for summer school, this happened to me a month ago. So I downloaded all DataCation of the kids that still are pending Regents exams. Then I unloaded from DataCation the report that says to me, you know, where the kids are in terms of credits, combine those two, and then because I meet with counselors, have a pretty good idea of who's failing and not making it, and I was able to give that report based on real data. Not an estimation, not having to bring 15 people around the table to say, okay guys, how are we going to figure this out? Because it's not that you don't know it, it's how quickly you need it. Because we always had it there. It was just not all in one place, or it took lots of human resources and hours to be able to get to the same information. So I mean, for me in my role, it's really helped me help others because we know our data. We all know what the kids need. It's helped us help others see what we need in a very fast way, in a reliable way.
The result has been my first summer, we had at the time the largest ever summer graduating class in the city of Rochester. Last summer, we beat the summer before that. So I've been able to raise my graduation rate over the summer alone 3 points one year, 4 points last year. Think about that. 4 percentage points our graduation rate increased by because of just the summer program. And that's honestly came strictly because of the kind of data we can pull from DataCation.